From chilling customs that defy belief to traditions that seem straight out of a legend, these tribes survive the unforgiving cold.
This is a life that is incredibly difficult
In ways that feel almost supernatural. Get ready to dive into the mysterious, thrilling lives of Arctic nomads that have baffled researchers with their ancient rituals.
We have 4 herds. We have to work to provide for our families.
Out on the icy expanse of the Chukotka Peninsula, the Chukchi people have been thriving for centuries, adapting to a land where winter never really loosens its grip. Many have settled in villages, but plenty still follow their ancient nomadic ways, moving across the tundra with their reindeer herds. For them, reindeer aren't just animals, they're life itself, providing food, clothing, and transport. Their culture is deeply spiritual, filled with shamanic rituals, throat singing, and stories that have survived for generations. The Soviet era tried to erase their traditions, but the Chukchi endured. Their language remains distinct, their way of life unbroken, and their ability to survive the Arctic's brutal cold is nothing short of legendary. Yuka gear. If you think Siberia is cold now, imagine surviving there thousands of years ago with nothing but your wits, a few tools, and a deep respect for nature. That's the Yuka gear way. These folks have been around longer than most other Siberian groups, relying on hunting, fishing, and pure survival instinct. Elk, reindeer, and fish are their mainstays, and back in the day, they moved with the seasons, setting up chums. But what really sets them apart? Their language. It's a total mystery. No known relatives, no connections to anything else spoken on Earth. With only about 1,600 Yukagir left, their culture is at risk, but they're holding on, keeping their traditions alive in one of the toughest places on the planet. Nenets. Deep in the Arctic tundra of Siberia, the Nenets people have been moving with the seasons for generations, following their vast reindeer herds across frozen landscapes. Even today, many still live as nomads, traveling up to 1,000 kilometers a year. Their homes, called chums, are sturdy tents made from reindeer hide, built to handle the brutal cold and fierce winds. And when it comes to staying warm, no one does it better. Their thick, fur-lined coats and boots, all made from reindeer, are perfect for surviving temperatures that drop far below freezing. The Nenets don't just endure the Arctic, they've mastered it, carrying on traditions that have kept their people thriving for centuries. Loba nomads. Imagine living up in the Himalayas, where the air is thin and the mountains never seem to end. That's life for the Loba nomads. These folks roam the high-altitude lands of Tibet and Arunachal Pradesh, herding yaks, those tough, furry creatures who are practically built for this harsh terrain. They live in tents made of yak wool and animal skins, setting up camp wherever their herds take them. Their lifestyle is semi-nomadic, which means they're always on the move, yet still deeply rooted in Tibetan Buddhism. They practice spiritual rituals for good harvests, and Losar, the Tibetan New Year, is all about dances, prayers, and big feasts. It's a tough life, but one that's been passed down for generations. Imagine just you, your yak, and the mountains. How wild is that? Yupik tribe. Out in the Arctic, survival isn't just about braving the cold. It's about understanding the land, the sea, and the spirits that weave them together. For the Yupik people, nature isn't just a backdrop. It's alive, with every mountain, river, and animal carrying its own spirit. Their shamans act as a link between worlds, guiding their people, offering healing, and keeping the balance in check. At the core of their beliefs is Elam Yua, the unseen force behind all creation. Their traditions are passed down through intricate carvings, mesmerizing dances, and the way they navigate their world. Masters of land and sea, the Yupik rely on their deep knowledge to hunt, build, and thrive in one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth. Dolgans. Imagine living in Siberia. I'm talking about the Taimyr Peninsula, where it's freezing and remote. That's home to the Dolgans, a small but mighty group who are masters of reindeer herding. These folks rely on their herds for pretty much everything: food, clothing, transportation, living a semi-nomadic life in the harshest cold imaginable. They're also hunters and fishermen out in the wilderness, chasing foxes, hares, and wild reindeer, and even fishing in icy rivers. Their homes are tent-like yurts made from animal skins and wood, which they pack up and move with the herds. They've got deep shamanistic beliefs too, seeing spirits in nature. It's like they're in sync with the land, no matter how tough it gets. Evens and Evenks.
The history of our people is not just in the legends, but also in the Budi Lukche.
If you think living in the Arctic is tough, imagine doing it while constantly on the move. That's life for the Even people, who've spent generations herding reindeer across the frozen tundra.
We have 4 herds. We have to work to provide.
Their whole world revolves around these animals. Transportation, clothing, food, even spiritual beliefs. They travel with reindeer-drawn sleds, bundle up in fur-lined coats, and when the spirits need appeasing, their shamans break out the drums and chants. It's not just about survival, it's about staying connected to the land, the ancestors, and the unseen forces that shape their world. Now, if you head deeper into the taiga forests, you'll meet the Evenks, masters of the wilderness. Unlike the Evens, they don't just ride on sleds, they're also expert horseback riders, a skill that may have influenced Mongolia's legendary horse culture. Their tents, called chums, are like the Arctic version of teepees, built from birch bark and reindeer hides. And speaking of reindeer, they're just as important here. Evenks herd them, hunt with them, and use them to carry supplies through the thick forests. Whether in the tundra or the woods, both the Evens and Evenks have spent centuries proving that no landscape is too harsh when you know how to work with nature instead of against it. Gwich'in.
We're taking a stand and we're taking back our home.
If there's one thing the Gwich'in know better than anyone, it's caribou. These aren't just animals to them, they're life itself. For generations, they've followed the massive porcupine caribou herd across the Arctic, relying on them for food, clothing, and even tools. Every piece is used, nothing goes to waste. And don't think they just sit around waiting for the herd. They're expert canoe makers, fur crafters, and straight up survival pros. But what really makes the Gwich'in stand out? Their fierce protection of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge.
We are caribou people. We carry a piece of the caribou in our heart, and the caribou carry a piece of us in their heart.
When oil drilling threatens the caribou's migration, they fight back because to them, saving the caribou means saving their way of life. Tough, resourceful, and deeply connected to the land, the Gwich'in aren't just living in the Arctic, they're defending it. Chimbu tribe and imagine standing in the middle of the jungle when suddenly, out of the mist, you see them, men covered in black and white paint, their bodies transformed into living skeletons. No, this isn't a ghost story. It's the warriors of the Chimbu or Simbu tribe in Papua New Guinea. And trust me, their enemies used to think they were seeing spirits from the afterlife. This wasn't just for show, it was psychological warfare. The eerie paint, the way they moved, it was enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. But these days, there's no war to fight. Now, the Chimbu skeleton warriors take their ghostly look to festivals instead, keeping the tradition alive in a way that's more about celebration than intimidation. Kalash people. The Kalash people live in the Kalash Valley in Pakistan, remote, beautiful, and tucked away between snow-capped mountains. What makes them stand out? Well, for starters, they've got this polytheistic religion that's kind of like a mix of ancient gods and nature worship. They've got deities for everything, even the goddess of water. They also rock some seriously vibrant clothing. The women wear colorful tunics, embroidered headpieces, and bead necklaces that say a lot about their age and status. Oh, and the festivals? Absolutely wild, with dancing, singing, and even some animal sacrifices to honor the gods. It's no wonder the Kalash have managed to keep their culture alive despite everything around them changing. Cool, right? Zigwa tribe. Most people see a snake and immediately back away, or sprint in the opposite direction. Not the Zagawa tribe. These folks from southwestern Tanzania have no fear. In fact, they've spent their entire lives training to handle snakes, even the venomous ones. They don't just handle them, they perform with them, letting the slithering creatures coil around their arms and necks like living jewelry. And they actually travel to other tribes, teaching people how to safely interact with snakes instead of fearing them. Aleuts. Out in the wild, stormy Aleutian Islands, the Aleuts have been owning the sea for generations. Way before fancy navigation tools, they were out there in bidarkas, basically the original kayaks, slicing through rough Arctic waters like it was nothing. Their homes, barabaras, were built partly underground to keep out the brutal winds because, let's be real, the Arctic doesn't play around. Even after Russian colonization and later American influence, many Aleuts still hold on to their roots, speaking their native language and passing down their seafaring skills. Tough, skilled, and seriously resourceful, they've been navigating both the ocean and history like pros, the Khanty and Mansi. Out in the vast, frozen stretches of Siberia, the Khanty and Mansi have been thriving for centuries, moving with the seasons and living off the land. Khanty are all about reindeer herding. Nomadic families pack up their huts and follow their herds across the tundra. When they're not herding, they're gliding down rivers in birch bark canoes or honoring the spirit of the bear in elaborate ceremonies. And not just any ceremony. After a bear hunt, they hold a full-on feast complete with songs, rituals, and deep respect for the animal spirit. The Mansi, meanwhile, are legendary hunters, tracking elk and reindeer through the dense Ural forests. They've got a storytelling tradition as rich as their embroidered clothing, weaving myths of ancient gods and spirits that still echo through their culture today. Fun fact, their language is actually distantly related to Hungarian, which is wild considering the two peoples are separated by thousands of miles. Both the Khanty and Mansi have held onto their traditions despite modern pressures, proving that even in the face of industrialization, some cultures refuse to be erased. The Sami tribe. The Sami people have been herding reindeer and singing their stories for thousands of years up in the Arctic. And when I say singing, I don't mean regular tunes. I'm talking about joik, a haunting, almost hypnotic style of singing that's less about lyrics and more about emotion. A joik isn't just a song. It's a way to be with something, whether it's a person, an animal, or even a memory. And then there's their clothing. You'll never mistake a Sami gakti for anything else. Bright colors, intricate patterns, and designs that tell where someone's from. It's not just for show, it's part of their identity. Even as modern life has crept in, reindeer herding and these rich traditions keep the heart of Sami culture alive. Asaro tribe. Now imagine walking through the highlands of Papua New Guinea when out of nowhere figures start emerging from the mist. Their bodies are covered in white clay, their faces hidden behind eerie, oversized masks. The Asaro, or ghost men, have arrived. But don't worry, they're not here to fight. In fact, that's the whole point. Instead of battling their enemies, they simply terrify them into running away. And honestly, who wouldn't bolt if they saw a group of silent, masked figures creeping toward them? Korowai people. Deep in the rainforests of West Papua, the Korowai people have taken living off the ground to a whole new level. Literally, their homes aren't just raised a little, their tree houses perched 30 to 50 feet in the air. Some even go higher. Why? Well, it keeps them safe from floods, biting insects, and according to their beliefs, wandering spirits. Imagine climbing a flimsy-looking ladder made of vines and logs just to get home. For the Korowai, that's just another Tuesday. While some have started interacting with the outside world, many still stick to their old ways, building their towering homes with nothing but forest materials and sheer ingenuity. It's like something out of a jungle fairy tale, but for them, it's just home. Mashko Piro. The Mashko Piro are like ghosts of the Amazon, but just out of reach. They're one of the last tribes that chooses isolation, slipping deeper into the rainforest whenever outsiders get too close. Every so often, they appear along riverbanks, watching, before vanishing into the trees like they were never there. They don't build high tree houses like the Korowai, but they do know how to disappear into the wild better than anyone. No one really knows the full extent of their traditions, because, well, they're not interested in sharing. And honestly, given history, you can't blame them. The Mashko Piro have mastered the art of staying hidden, proving that sometimes the best way to survive is to simply not be found. The AWA. Deep in the Amazon, there are tribes that prefer to keep their distance from the modern world. Apart from Mashco Piro of Peru, the Awa of Brazil are among the last truly isolated peoples on Earth. The Awa, in particular, are master survivalists. They know every plant, every animal, every whisper of the wind, but their way of life is under constant threat.
Loggers come and destroy the forest, and we have to flee.
Deforestation is forcing them into unwanted contact with outsiders. With only a few hundred left, they're one of the most endangered tribes in the world. Yet despite everything, they hold on to their traditions, proving that the jungle is more than just a home. It's part of who they are. Tagari. The Tagari don't have visitors at all. They're one of the last uncontacted tribes in Ecuador, living in the dense wilderness of Yasuni National Park, and they intend to keep it that way. Strangers wandering too close, not a great idea. They've been known to defend their land fiercely, because for them, it's not just home, it's survival. Unlike many indigenous groups, the Tagari have completely rejected outside contact, refusing modern influence. No roads, no stores, no technology, just the way their ancestors lived, and yet even without the modern world, they thrive, knowing every inch of their land better than any outsider ever could. As deforestation creeps closer, their future is uncertain, but one thing's for sure, they're not giving up their way of life without a fight. Matsis. The Matsis are warriors of the Amazon, and they've got the battle scars, or rather, tattoos, to prove it. Their intricate facial markings aren't just for show. They're a symbol of strength, passed down through generations. And if that wasn't intense enough, they have another trick up their sleeve: frog venom. Yep, before a hunt, some Matsis warriors apply kambo, a secretion from a giant leaf frog, directly into their skin. It's not for the faint of heart. The venom hits fast, causing an intense reaction, but once it passes, they say it sharpens the senses, boosts endurance, and makes them stronger hunters. Whether it's tracking prey through dense jungle or holding on to traditions in a changing world, one thing's clear: the Matsis don't do anything halfway. The Waorani. The Waorani aren't just hunters, they're jungle survival experts, using techniques and objects that would leave even the hunting veteran stunned. But what really sets the Waorani apart is their language. Wow Terrero. It's unlike anything else, totally unconnected to any other known tongue. It's as if the jungle itself whispered its own secret words just for them. Some Waorani have embraced the modern world, but others still reject all outside contact, holding on to a way of life that has remained fiercely independent for centuries. Jarawa tribe. The Jarawa are basically living history, still practicing an ancient way of life that most of us only read about. These guys live off the land, fishing, hunting, and gathering straight from the rainforest. They don't want anything to do with the outside world, and honestly, the government backs them up on that one. No one's allowed to disturb their peaceful existence. Imagine living in total harmony with nature, totally unplugged from the modern world. That's the Jarawa. They don't use any fancy tools, just what they need to survive. And the best part, they do it all without being bothered by anyone, keeping their traditions alive and well in the heart of the Andaman Islands. Pretty wild, right? The Batak people. The Batak people are like a cool living mosaic spread across the lush landscapes of North Sumatra, Indonesia. Lake Toba, the world's largest volcanic lake, as their backdrop. The Batak are split into 6 main groups, each having its own language and traditions. But they all share that same Batak spirit, like a big family. They've embraced Christianity over the years, thanks to missionaries, but don't think they've ditched their roots. Nope, their traditional houses, gorgeous with boat-shaped roofs and crazy cool carvings. And when it comes to music, their Margandang, a mix of singing and drumming, will get you moving. It's all about honoring family, community, and those age-old customs that keep their culture strong. Sand people.
Talaga sa agua.
The Sand People, one of the oldest cultures on Earth, have been living in southern Africa for over 20,000 years. Imagine that, a history that stretches back to the dawn of humanity. They live mostly in the Kalahari Desert, across a few countries like Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa. What's really cool, they speak languages full of these incredible click sounds like tisk tisk and click click, which you've probably never heard anywhere else. While the San have faced tough times, being pushed off their lands and struggling for basic rights, they still hold on to their roots. They're expert hunters and gatherers, knowing the land like the back of their hands. Oh, and their rock art? It's more than just pretty pictures. It's how they express their beliefs and tell their stories. Maasai Tribe. The Maasai, living in the heart of the Great Rift Valley, are known for their bright red shukas, basically cool, colorful clothes, and their epic beadwork that tells you all about who they are, what age they are, what their status is, all that. They've got this unique way of life that's deeply tied to their cattle. Those animals are like the ultimate wealth symbol for them. While many Maasai folks have adapted to modern life, they're still all about herding goats, sheep, and cattle, no matter the challenges. Climate change, land loss, you name it. And have you ever seen them jump? Seriously, their Adamu dance is a battle to see who can jump the highest, and it's something you'll never forget. It's all about tradition, community, and a life lived close to the land. Ifugao. The Ifugao people of the Philippines are the ones behind the rice terraces that look like something straight out of a dream. Seriously, these things are called the 8th wonder of the world, carved into the mountainsides over 2,000 years ago. They're not just pretty to look at, they're a masterpiece of farming and engineering. The Ifugao still hold on to a lot of their traditions, from their beautiful hudhud chants during harvest, to their deep respect for ancestors and spirits. But, like a lot of places, modern life and tourism are starting to pull the younger generation away from the land. It's a balancing act, holding on to those ancient practices while navigating the modern world. You can't help but admire their resilience. Samburu tribe. The Samburu people, living in the arid northern Kenya, are often called the butterfly people because of their vibrant, colorful beadwork. You can spot them a mile away with their bright beads decorating everything from clothing to hairstyles. But it's not all about looking cool. They take their cattle seriously. To them, livestock are sacred, and everything revolves around herding cows, goats, sheep, and camels. The Samburu also follow an age set system, which basically means everyone has a role at different life stages. And yeah, they're big on dances, songs, and rituals, especially when it comes to marking important events. Despite the challenges like drought and land loss, they stick to their traditions with pride. The Quechua. The Quechua people are straight up legends of the Andes, descendants of the Inca Empire. Their living history and their language, Quechua, still echoes through the mountains today. It was the Incas' go-to language, and now it's the most spoken indigenous language in the Americas. Despite modern-day struggles like poverty and marginalization, they're hanging on to their roots. Their textiles are more than just clothes. They're a story, with each stunning pattern telling tales of nature, the cosmos, and their ancestors. They're also all about farming, growing things like potatoes. Yes, they were the potato innovators, and quinoa. Oh, and don't forget their spiritual side, blending Catholicism with the worship of Pachamama, the earth goddess. The Dayak tribe.
Ada yang lebih rendah membatur.
Alright, let's talk about the Dayak, the folks from Borneo. These guys live deep in the rainforests and river valleys surrounded by nature's chaos, so they're all about their longhouses, big communal spots that house tons of families. But here's the wild part. These folks had a history of headhunting. Yeah, you heard that right, it was tied to warfare and their spiritual beliefs, but don't worry, it's not a thing anymore. Today they're facing some serious challenges, like deforestation and land grabbing. Still, they're holding on to their traditions, celebrating big time with the Gawe Dayak Harvest Festival, complete with music, dancing, and rituals. Oh, and their craftsmanship is mind-blowing. Think weaving, beadwork, and wood carving that's like nothing else. Yao people.
and this is very popular in my village. This natural medicine, if you have herbal bath.
The Yao people. These folks hail from places like southern China, northern Vietnam, and Laos. And let me tell you, their style is something else. The women in particular are famous for their super long hair. Like, they don't cut it their whole lives. It gets all wrapped up into a massive knot or cool headdress. Crazy, right? The Yao also rock some seriously vibrant traditional clothing, almost like walking art. They've got their own language too, part of the Miao Yao family, which adds even more depth to their culture. While many have moved to cities, they're still farming the land, growing everything from rice to tea. Badui tribe.
We need to protect our traditional lifestyle, an obligation we have to our ancestors.
The Badui are a group of people in Indonesia who are basically like living time capsules. They're tucked away in the Kanekes Valley, totally off the grid, like no electricity, no mobile phones, and no cars. Seriously, they live the old school way, sticking to hand-woven clothes and traditional farming methods. There's two main groups, the inner Badui, who follow the strictest rules. We're talking no modern tech, nothing, and the outer Badui, who are a little more chill and can chat with outsiders. They're all about spirituality, nature, and ancestor worship, with a religion called Kisan that's all about peace and harmony. The inner Badui even have rules for visitors, like you've got to wear their traditional clothes and leave your phone behind. Respect is key. Mentawai tribe.
1965. The government tried to come here with the police, army.
The Mentawai people. Talk about a tribe that's all about making their mark. Literally. These folks live in the rainforests of the Mentawai Islands, off the coast of Sumatra, and are famous for their tattoos and scarification. And I'm not talking about some quick Instagram tattoos. No, they use thorns and bamboo needles, and their designs deal animals, nature, personal milestones, tell stories of who they are, and it's all part of big life moments, like adulthood or marriage. Imagine living in treehouse villages, hunting with skillful tools, and being deeply connected to the spirits of the land. Oh, and their body art. It's as much a part of them as their belief in nature's spirits. Sure, they've been influenced by the modern world, but the Mentawai hold strong to their wild, vibrant ways. Yami people. The Yami people inhabit Orchid Island off the coast of Taiwan. These folks are like the OG fishermen. They've been spearfishing and cruising the Pacific in wooden canoes passed down through generations. No joke, their whole vibe revolves around the sea, with rituals to honor both the sea gods and their ancestors. They've got this language, Puyuma, that's so unique, it's practically its own thing in Taiwan. And while tattooing used to be a big rite of passage for women, symbolizing maturity and beauty, the Yami still rock that same sense of deep connection to their traditional ways, even in a world that's increasingly modern. Seriously, they're one of the coolest communities you've probably never heard of. The Tsachila. The Tsachila people of Ecuador have this super cool tradition. They paint their hair bright red with a paste made from annatto seeds. And no, it's not just for looks. This red hair represents their strength, identity, and even offers spiritual protection. Talk about making a statement, right? They're also all about nature, farming crops like plantains, corn, and yucca, and living in these round, thatched roof huts that keep them cool in the humid rainforest. They practice shamanism too, with spiritual leaders helping them connect to their ancestors in the land. Oh, and don't forget their crafting skills. The masks and tools they make are works of art. In short, the Tsachila are living proof that tradition can be both fascinating and beautiful. The Fulani. The Fulani are everywhere in West Africa, spanning countries like Nigeria, Mali, and Senegal. These folks have been nomadic herders for centuries, raising cattle, camels, and goats as they move across the savannas. But what really stands out about them isn't just their cattle, it's their style. We're talking elaborate hairstyles, jewelry, and even tattoos that tell the story of someone's life, like whether they're married or reached a big milestone. And let's not forget their famous Garawal festival, where young men show off their best moves, decked out in face paint and stunning adornments, all in the name of courtship. Even though some have settled in cities, their nomadic spirit is still alive and kicking. Bajau tribe.
I can't tell for sure, but I think there's at least a dozen villages on still.
The Bajau people are some of the best free divers in the world. I'm talking about diving to depths of over 70 meters, no fancy scuba gear, just pure skill and a lot of lung power. They've got enlarged spleens that help them hold their breath forever. It's like they're part fish. These guys live on boats or in stilt houses that float above the water, and they've been doing it for centuries. It's not just about diving either. Their whole way of life revolves around the sea, fishing, sailing, and celebrating with sea-inspired dances. It's a way of life that's literally in their blood, and it's pretty dang cool. Open discussion. One of our subscribers shared this strange picture with us, asking about the tribe. As I dug deeper, I stumbled upon the Inuits, and man, did I find something creepy. Living deep in the Arctic for centuries, they might seem harmless bundled up in their clothes, but trust me, their ways are anything but ordinary. One of the most chilling rituals? The bone pointing. A shaman would take a whale bone, or any bone, really, and point it at someone. It wasn't an act of violence, but the fear it stirred, absolutely unsettling. They believed it could exorcise bad spirits or punish someone, disrupting the balance of the entire community. It's like a silent curse, one that could change your fate in an instant. Yeah, I'd be keeping my distance too.